Hey guys, Dr. Ben here at the Functional Medicine Center, and today I want to go over something that we see way more often than we should in this country, and something that we're seeing even in younger people, teenagers, 20, 30-something year olds, and that's called insulin resistance. A lot of you may have heard this term, insulin resistance, and you think about, oh, I'm diabetic or almost diabetic and we're getting insulin resistance. Well, no, you don't have to be pre-diabetic or diabetic to get insulin resistant. So let's start with the basic physiology here. Insulin is a hormone that grabs a hold of glucose and pulls it into the cell. What glucose does in the cell, sugar, is it helps produce energy. This is, if you go way back to your physiology and anatomy classes in high school, Krebs cycle, or the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, is going to help produce energy in the form of ATP. It uses oxygen and glucose. So that's why I'm always talking about the number one thing that we need for the brain is fuel, oxygen and glucose. So we've got to have that consistent stream of glucose. Insulin is basically the key that's unlocking the door to the cell so that glucose can get into the cell and we can produce that energy. Okay, great. So what happens over time with somebody's body? Well, basically, over time of going up and down, up and down, up and down with glucose levels, every time it spikes up here, the glucose goes up too high and we grab insulin. Insulin is going to be the key that's going to go into the receptor on our cell. And when insulin goes into that receptor, glucose goes into the cell and we produce energy. Okay, that's what happens in an optimally working person. But over time, this receptor starts getting gummed up. Basically a 100-year-old keyhole where you're sitting there trying to jimmy the key in there and it will not open up. So what happens then? Well, we need to, one of two things. We need to make sure that we're not getting these glucose spikes so that we don't have to worry about that insulin responding into that receptor and glucose going in like it's supposed to. And we need to help ungum up that receptor. And the way we do that is with inositol and with some different supplements that can help with that. But ultimately, the dietary changes where we keep that blood sugar in this nice controlled range is the number one thing we're going to be able to do. So insulin, 7 is a really good number, even non-fasting, to be at. What we see with people, and this is why we do non-fasting blood work and not just fasting blood work, because someone may be 6, 7, 8, 9 fasting, non-fasting, they could be 30, 40, 80, 90, we've seen 120 before. So that means people are kicking out from their pancreas, they're kicking out 2 to 15 times as much insulin as they need. Insulin is great, but in excess, very inflammatory. And this is where we get a lot of the inflammation in the body. We get a lot of the damage to our tissues. We throw off hormones. That's why young women with polycystic ovarian syndrome, they get put on metformin, which is a diabetes drug, because this insulin resistance is so prevalent in it. So basically, that receptor is not responding to the insulin like it should, and so we need to change why it got there, and that's usually these spikes, these ups and downs, that is very stressful for the body. We see a change in neurological symptoms. This is why people, they call Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes. We see inflammation, we see hormone problems, we see weight problems, all types of things from this insulin problem here, this insulin resistance. So if you don't know your insulin levels, you've got to see what they are and do it non-fasting, not just fasting. So something very common that a lot of people do not put in their blood work is running an insulin. And another thing most offices don't do is do a non-fasting blood work. They just want to see what cholesterol is. Sure, great, cholesterol is interesting, but it's nothing compared to insulin, nothing compared to some of these other markers that we want to see. So if you haven't had your insulin tested yet, get your insulin tested, get it tested non-fasting, see what it is. 7 is a great number. Anything higher than that, very good likelihood you're drifting into that insulin resistance. Like or share this with anybody that you know is dealing with health issues. We love getting the information out there. If you have any questions, drop them down below. Have a great day, guys. Take care.